The blood-stained snakes were commonly called flower snake. They looked very cute, but they were undoubtedly venomous vipers. Soryong descended into the snake's nest, and within seconds, dozens of venomous snakes began to coil around his body, biting his hands and legs. Unlike venomous snakes that had hook-shaped fangs at the front of their mouths, these snakes had small venomous fangs in the molar area, which made injecting venom difficult. However, in terms of toxicity, they were the most poisonous terrestrial snakes in East Asia. Soryong began to sweat and with a smile asked the snakes to bite him harder. A snake bit him on the hand, his attention was fixed on it, and he clenched his teeth due to the pain. It was evident that these snakes had a stronger venom than the black mamba, but the technique for controlling internal energy of the Tang clan would help him resist the poison, so he was going to be fine for now. The little centipedes, somewhat worried about their father, peeked out and began to call for his attention. Soryong asked them not to worry and told them to stay calm since he would soon leave the snake's nest. Soryong's eyes widened in surprise as something caught his attention. His hand and arm were full of snake bites. Seeing this, he thought that this should be enough. He turned his head and with a calm expression decided to leave this place, but then he could not move, causing his eyes to widen in confusion. Once Soryong looked down, he saw that the snakes had coiled around his legs. He was in shock as he did not expect this to happen. He could not help but clench his teeth and panic since this was not part of the plan. But to his surprise, the small centipedes descended into the nest of snakes, landing on his head and shoulders, leaving him somewhat surprised. It was adorable. One of the small centipedes became enraged and began to roar. Soryong started to observe it and his eyes filled with confusion. One of the snakes began to stare at the centipede and started to hiss. This made the small centipede even angrier, who little by little began to lose patience. The small creature got down from Soryong's head, bit the snake, and with a furious gaze, slammed its body forcefully against the ground, leaving Soryong in shock. The little centipede bit another snake and started to fight. Soryong's attention was fixed on it. He was somewhat confused without knowing what was happening. In an instant, the little centipede defeated the snake and its eyes began to shine with joy and it began to smile. Soryong could not help but thank it for scaring away the other snakes. Soryong crouched down and realized that they were worried about him. He began to caress the centipede's head and could not help but smile. The little centipede climbed onto Soryong's head and fell asleep. With a smile, he decided it was time to go to mom. Back in the battle, Hyeon was somewhat exhausted, but her eyes were shining with determination. Many of the clan members had already fallen, and while several were surrounding Guchenak, he grabbed another by the neck and using his power, absorbed his blood, recovering energy. Hyeon knew better than anyone that at this rate everyone was going to die. Foam began to come out of the man's mouth. Guchenak tightly grabbed his neck and began to absorb his blood. His eyes started to shine, and with a wicked smile, he mentioned that this was very easy. He was exhausted and sweating. He couldn't help but clench his teeth. Guchenak mocked them, asking if there was no one left who could stand against him. Hyeon drew her whip. Instead of thinking about fleeing, she wanted to keep fighting and hoped that Soryong had escaped safe and sound. She stood firm and gave the order to everyone not to lose sight of Guchenak and to keep as much distance as possible. The rain was going to stop, so she asked them to send another signal to the nearby warriors. One of the men nodded, and Guchenak couldn't help but smile. One of the elders stepped forward and, with a sincere gaze, asked Hyeon to retreat with Soryong. Upon hearing this, her eyes widened in surprise, and without hesitating for even a second, she refused. The men of the clan began to argue since there was no way that a direct descendant of the Tang clan could leave alone, abandoning the members of her clan while they fought. If they couldn't save her, they wouldn't be able to face the patriarch. Guchenak crossed his arms and remained silent. They asked Hyeon to leave quickly, but she refused since she was not going to leave the clan behind. This made Guchenak gradually start losing patience. He interrupted the conversation and said that it was enough. He began to observe Hyeon and the elder and made it clear that if his toys escaped, he would end up bored. He couldn't help but show an evil smile. He put his hand on his chin and revealed that if Hyeon fled, he would turn the Tang clan into a hell since, to announce the return of the blood cult, it was necessary to give a great greeting. The elder couldn't help but clench his teeth upon realizing that this bastard had no intention of letting any of them go. Upon hearing this, Hyeon drew her whip. With a determined gaze, she swore to take at least one of Guchenak's arms even if in the process everyone died. The others nodded their heads, her gaze fixed on Guchenak, and he couldn't help but smile. But just then, someone appeared behind them and mentioned that it was just as she had said. Someone from the clan never leaves the other members behind. This caught everyone's attention. Huiyen's jaw dropped and her eyes widened in surprise. It was Soryong. With a confident smile, he began to walk towards them. The elder was speechless, and Huiyen felt somewhat worried without knowing why Soryong had returned. Soryong began to remove the small centipedes from his body, closed his eyes, and asked them to wait here, then reiterated that the Tang clan never surrendered nor left its members behind. Then he took off his shirt, and his eyes began to shine with determination, making it clear that he too was a member of the Tang clan. He drew his kunais and began to charge against Guchenak. Seeing this, an excited smile appeared on his face. Huiyen couldn't help but feel somewhat worried and asked Soryong not to do it. Guchenak prepared to attack. He had spared his life, and now Soryong had returned by his own means. According to him, Soryong was an idiot. Soryong lunged at him, ready to attack. Huiyen was in shock as, without much effort, Guchenak grabbed Soryong by the neck. His eyes began to shine with joy. He extended his hand and began to smile upon seeing that Soryong was willing to give him his blood. He placed his hand on Soryong's abdomen and decided to taste his blood, making him clench his teeth. But Soryong reacted in time and blocked the attack with his arm. Using his power, Guchenak began to absorb his blood. With an evil grin, Guchenak called Soryong an idiot, explaining that blood also flowed through the arms. He began to absorb Soryong's blood through his arm, causing him terrible pain. Seeing this, Huiyen and P panicked. She couldn't help but feel fear, and showing concern, she gave the order for everyone to help Soryong. While Guchenak was slowly absorbing Soryong's blood, P and Huiyen started running toward them. Guchenak began to feel pleasure since it had been a long time since he had tasted the essence of a young man's blood. Just before P and the others could approach him, he forcefully stepped on the ground, released Soryong's body, and used the technique called blood-filled wave, destroying the ground and repelling everyone. P and the others were sent flying backward and crashed into the ground. Luckily, Huiyen reacted in time and caught Soryong. Guchenak, who had become more powerful, began to smile. They had been very annoying, throwing hidden weapons like flies, but thanks to Soryong, he was able to take care of them all at once. Soryong fainted. Huiyen approached and, with a desperate expression, tried to wake him up. As a form of gratitude, Guchenak decided to grant Soryong a painless death. She hugged Soryong, saying that was not going to happen. Just then, he coughed and slowly began to wake up, catching Huiyen's attention. Drool started coming out of Guchenak's mouth, and he demanded to know what Soryong had done. His hair began to fall like leaves, and little by little he began to grow old. With a gaze full of fear, he soon realized that this was the effect of an energy-dissipating poison. Little by little, he began to lose strength, and his body started to tremble. For him, this was impossible since the internal energy techniques of the cult should be resistant to the energy-dissipating poison. He put his hands on his face and went crazy because this made no sense. He wanted to know who the hell Soryong was. With a smile, he began to sit down and, pointing with his finger, revealed that he was his natural enemy. Huiyen couldn't help but feel relieved to see that Soryong was fine. So, friends, this chapter comes to an end. What will happen next? We'll uncover it in the next chapter. Don't forget to rate this chapter out of 10 in the comments. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care and goodbye. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.